Court.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So last week we started Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, the fundamentals of the Torah. The first section of the Mishneh Torah, right, which is Maimonides' halachic masterpiece. However, the beginning is very, very philosophical. Maybe one of the most difficult sections. It's maybe one of the most difficult writings of Maimonides, even more than, in a way, it could be thought of as like a roadmap to his philosophical guide, the guide for the perplexed. Okay, so we started talking about, the primary being, the cause of all causes. What does this mean, the primary being? Is primary to what? If we're not even talking about there's no existence to time. And we started to understand that everything is relative. Our reality itself is relative. We have a very different perception of reality than maybe what we were accustomed to thinking, right? God isn't just the creator who created the universe and the world a long, long time ago. But he is the one who holds everything in existence at all times, right? More similar, as it were, you can compare it to holding a thought in your mind. As long as you're thinking of that, that thing that you're thinking of exists in your mind, right? However, does it really exist? Well, that depends. It depends on what level of reality you're living, right? If you're living at that level of that thought, right? For instance, Harry Potter and his friends, right? Are they real? That's a difficult question to answer. It's all relative. To each other, they are real. To the reader, they are fiction, right? And one of the things that comes out of this is that basically there is no such thing as reality without God constantly holding something in reality. And that is the main issue that we have, right? That differentiates us from the philosophers regarding divine providence. In order to exist, God, so to speak, needs to be constantly thinking of you, providing over you, right? Presiding over you. He's always conscious of you. And therefore, there is no existence without divine providence. The universe can't exist if there is no divine providence. So we got into this whole concept of relative reality, right? That God's, so comes with, so every reality is relative to whichever level of reality is above it, holding it in existence. And therefore, there is only one ultimate reality, and is that of the primary being, of God himself. All right, and we said, Lefichach, therefore, en amitato ka'amitat ahad mehem. Therefore, his truthness isn't comparable to that of anything else in the universe or the universe itself. And this is what the Navi says, Vadunai Elohim Emet. God, our Lord, is truth. He is the truth. And so it says, En od milevato, there is nothing else besides him. Right? So he's the primary being, right? He is the ultimate, the primary cause of all the universe and everything that exists in it. There are different levels of reality. He's the ultimate reality. He is the ultimate truth, the only thing really that really exists. All right, and that's where we ended last week. And we're going to pick up from there. It says, Hamatzui Hazeh, this being, of which we are speaking, this primary being, this ultimate being, Hu Eloah Ha'olam, Adon Kol Ha'aris. Says he is Eloha. What is the Eloha? Says he is the God of the world. Said Eloha also means supreme authority. Right? Remember in our previous course, we we're talking about the Supreme Court. One of the words that designates the Supreme Court is Elohim or Eloha. When it says Ad ha-Elohim yavo devar shenehem, if two people have a dispute, right, and they can't resolve it, it says they shall come before the Elohim. What is the Elohim? Elohim is the court. It's the supreme source of authority. He says this primary being, which is the ultimate reality, and therefore the ultimate truth, he is also the ultimate source of authority. Eloah ha'olam. Adon is master. Adon kol ha'aretz. He is master of the universe. So there's two things here. One is authority. There's authority over all of mankind, all of humanity, the entire world. And he is also master of the physical universe, right? You say God wrote two books, the book of physics and the book of law for man, the Torah. Right? These are his two books, master of the universe and the supreme authority of man. והוא המנהיג הגלגל בכוח שאנוקס לתכלית. And he is also the leader, what's literally translate the leader. He's the one who moves forward the cycles. Galgal. What is the Galgal? Well, if you go back to ancient philosophy, they believe that there's the earth in the center, and there are different spheres revolving around it with the different planets and the different stars. The truth is, it doesn't really matter if we look at ancient philosophy, because we can also reinterpret it today. We know every single thing in the universe is in orbit, is always revolving in a circle, right? Whether we look at the moon orbiting the earth orbiting the sun, and all the other planets orbiting the sun as a solar system orbiting the center of the galaxy. The galaxy itself is also spiraling, and it's also in orbit. Or if you look, quantum, minute, you look in the molecules and the atoms, right? You have the core of the atom, and you have electrons orbiting around the center of the atom. Everything is always in constant motion, and circular motion has always been perceived as an infinite motion. And an infinite motion requires infinite energy and work. So he says, he is the one who is moving everything. Right? With an energy, with a force that never ends. How do we know that there is no end to this force? שהגלגל סובב תמיד. Because everything is constantly in motion. ואי אפשר שייסוב ולא מסבב. Right? And nothing can move without something putting it in motion. Investing energy and force to move things. Vehu baruch hu, and he, blessed be he, hamisavev oto belo yad ubelo guf. Right? He keeps pushing everything. He keeps everything in motion without the use of a hand or any physical form. All right? So again, he is, before we get to Eloah Ha'olam, right? The supreme authority. He is also the master of the universe. He keeps the universe in motion. he invests an infinite amount of energy, and we see this because it requires an infinite amount of force in order to keep everything in motion all the time. And he does this without any physical form, right? It's not like you have your coffee, you put your milk, and you stir it and everything's moving. No, he stirs it, doesn't need a spoon, and he doesn't need a finger. He stirs it without any physical form. All right? So he is the ultimate master, and therefore the ultimate source of authority. And acknowledging God's ultimate authority is a mitzvah, is a positive mitzvah in the Torah. V'di'at davar zeh mitzvat aseh, shene'emar, as it says, Anochi Adonai Elohecha. I, Adonai, am your supreme authority. Right? This is the first mitzvah in the Ten Commandments. Anochi Adonai Elohecha. I am your supreme God, source of authority. וכל המעלה על דעתו שיש שם אלוה אחר חוץ מזה עובר בלא תעשה. And anyone who would think or acknowledge any other source of supreme authority is transgressing a negative mitzvah. It says, "Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai." Right? You shall have no other God / supreme authority in my face. What does that mean, in my face, in my presence? Well, God is always present. So it is asur, it is forbidden to acknowledge the supreme authority of something else above God's own authority. And halakha lema'aseh, right? The halakha says that anything that the king tells you to do, you must do. You must follow the king's command. He is the supreme authority of the land, of whatever land it is you are currently in. He says, however, if you're in the middle of doing a mitzvah, all right, you're in the middle of doing something that you're required to do by Torah, by law, and the king tells you, drop what you're doing, I have something for you to do. Well, says, well, ha'asuk b'mitzvah patur min ha'mitzvah. Right, a person who is in the middle of doing a mitzvah is exempt from doing another mitzvah that conflicts with it at the moment. So you don't drop what you're doing if you're in the middle of doing a mitzvah to do the king's bidding. You finish what you're doing, and then you get to whatever it is the king asks from you. All right, of course, if he's not going to kill you for it, there's other laws regarding when pikuach hanefesh dictates that you drop what you're doing to save your life or to follow the king's command. And then the halakha says, ve'en tzarich lomar. It says, and it goes without saying that if the king commanded you to do something that is forbidden in the Torah, that you don't listen to him. And tzarich lomar, she'im amarcha la'asot davar she'asur, you don't listen to him, you ignore what he says. So what is the mitzvah? The first positive mitzvah in the Ten Commandments is Anochi Adonai Elohecha, to recognize that same as there are different levels of reality and different levels of truth, there are different levels of authority. And there is one supreme authority. The ultimate authority over everybody and everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? And we need to recognize that.
Can I have a
question? Excuse me?
Can I have a question here?
Yes.
When you are doing a mitzvah, it is not, you said, to be interrupted. But at Akedat Yitzchak, Abraham was all ready to do mitzvah. and the angel called to him to stop.
Right. So what was the mitzvah though?
Yeah, he received order to sacrifice Yitzhak.
Right. Okay. So now he has a mitzvah to sacrifice his heart. And now, who gave him this order?
Hashem?
We'll see later on in the course when we get to the section about prophecy that all prophecy is not direct communication with God. It comes through an angel. There's an angel that speaks to man. So even when Abraham received this prophecy, while it's not explicit in the Torah, but it was an angel speaking to God, speaking to Abraham in God's name. And then when an angel appeared to him to tell him stop, that was also in God's name. So he gave him a different mitzvah that replaced the first mitzvah. So it's not a contradicting authority. It's the same authority. It's a God tells the king comes and tells you to do something that you're allowed to do, right? And you're doing, you're following the law, and then the law changes. He changes the law and he says, stop doing this, do something else instead. So both mitzvot, really, sacrifice your son and then don't sacrifice your son, they came from the same place. It's the same level of authority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So acknowledging God's supreme level of authority, supreme authority, is the first mitzvah of the Ten Commandments. I am your supreme authority. And recognizing, meaning executing a command of a lesser authority that contradicts the mitzvot that God gave you, is a negative mitzvah. Is a transgression against a negative mitzvah. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. Right, the second of the Ten Commandments. The kafar ba'ikar. Kafar means, and he rejected, or he became kofar. He what's the word? He rejected the most foundational principle. Kafar ba'ikar, shezehu ha'ikar ha'gadol shehakol talui bo. Right, this is the biggest foundation, right, that everything is dependent on. Everything is dependent on this, that God is the supreme authority, that there is relative authority, there's relative existence, and God is the ultimate one. Why is this the foundation of everything? Well, it's the number one foundation of the Torah, right? Without acknowledging God's authority and without acknowledging the existence of God, well, there's no divine communication and there is no Torah. But he says, everything is dependent on this. How is everything dependent on this concept? Well, by denying God's supreme authority, you're denying the existence of a supreme authority, right? If there's no supreme source of authority, then there's no supreme ultimate truth. There's no ultimate authority, means that there's no ultimate truth, and there's no ultimate reality. And if there's no ultimate reality, there is no level of existence that can bring anything else into existence. And there's nothing. Everything is dependent on this Yesoda Yesodot, the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of wisdom, is acknowledging that there is a primary being. And that primary being is the ultimate being, is the ultimate level of existence, the ultimate truth, and the ultimate supreme authority over the entire universe and all of mankind. Is that understood? Any questions?
I would like to ask, in Torah, Hashem is called Elohim.
Right.
And also the angels are called Elohim.
Right. Angels are also called Elohim. Remember, Elohim is a description. It's God's job. Right? Adonai, right? Yud Ke Vav Ke, the called the tetragrammaton, the four-letter word name that you're not allowed to pronounce. That's God's name. That's like saying, "Hi, Sarah." Right? Hi, Sarah. That's saying your name. You are my friend. Right? That's Anuchi Adonai Elohecha. I, God, am your supreme authority. I, Sammy, am your friend, or your teacher, or whatever. Right? The angels are also called Elohim because, as we saw, we get prophecy through the angels, and they speak in the name of God. And what they command us to do is authoritative. Of course, as we saw, prophecy cannot come and change the mitzvot that we received in the Torah. So there's still the ultimate authority of God above the angels. If an angel comes, which wouldn't really happen, but let's say it would happen, an angel will come and speak to you in your dream and tell you to do something that is asur to do. If it doesn't meet the conditions in the Torah for changing one of the laws, then you can't do it. God's authority is superior. And we already accepted the Torah. Anyone else? Any more questions? Okay, we'll continue. Eloah ze echadhu. All right, this supreme authority, this God of which we speak, up until now we always refer to him as Hamatsui, right? This being. And now we say, well, this being, Hamatsui as Eloah Ha'olam, he's also the authority, he is the Elohim. And so now he's going to refer to him as Elohim. Eloah ze, right? This God, Ehadhu, he is one. What does that mean, he is one? It says, Eino lo shenaim velo yater al shenaim. Says, well, he's not double and he's not multiple. Basically saying he's not a numerical one. He's not a mathematical one. As opposed to, let's say, the Babylonians also had at some point a one God. There were many gods once, and they all went to war against each other. And one of them, his name was Marduk, he was victorious over all the other gods, and he was left alone. So there were 5, and then there were 3, and then there were 2, and then we were left with 1. Says, no, that's a mathematical one. Our one, when we say God is one, it's for a lack of a better term. And we'll see. So he's not multiple in any way. And he's not dual either. There aren't two. There isn't like a good or a dark God and a light God or a positive or Marduk and Tiamat. No, it says Ela Ehad, only a single God, one. אחד שאין כייחודו אחד מן האחדים הנמצאים בעולם. He says, even one or unique or singular is a relative term. The oneness of God, the unity of God, doesn't resemble any other unity that we are familiar with on earth. לא אחד כמין שהוא כולל אחדים הרבה. Okay, there are, for instance, there are many species in the world. He says, but there is one species which is unique and special, right? The human race. He says, okay, so there are many, many species, but there's one specific one that is special. No, because that one, it's, how do you call it? It's made up of many other peoples. He says, all right. So relative to the entire, all life forms, there is one species which is special. Relative to that species, there is one people that is special, right? Mika Amicha Israel, right? Who, like your nation of Israel, Goy Ehad Ba'aris, a unique nation on the earth. Okay, but then again, the nation is also divisible into individuals. It says, Velo Ehad Kiguf, Shu Nehlak Nemachlakot V'Leksavot. Okay, so there's one person, he's one relative to the nation, but he's a physical form. He has different body parts. He's got a head, he's got legs, he's got arms. He can be divided into different parts. Right? The oneness of God is indivisible. You can't be, there's no left side and right side or up or down. It says his unity is one that is, there is nothing to compare it to in the universe. So what does that mean? Well, now he's going to go backwards. So first of all, we're going to see that every physical form is divisible. And therefore, if he is one, he can't be a physical form because he's indivisible. So, ilu hayu ha'elohot harbe. If there were many of these supreme beings, right, hayu gufin ugviyot, then they would have to be in physical form. Why? מפני שאין הנמנים השווים במציאותן נפרדים זה מזה, אלא במאורעים שיראו הגופות והגוויות. This is a very difficult sentence. Even native Hebrew speakers have a hard time with it. מפני שאין הנמנים, right? The things that could be counted, enumerated, 1, 2, 3, 4, השווים במציאותן, all living on the same level of existence, נפרדים זה מזה, right? They can only be differentiated one from another, במאורעים שיראו הגופות והגוויות, the events that apply to physical form. I'm going to explain. I have a plane over here, okay? The table. On the table, there are two books. It's one plane of existence. How can I differentiate between the two objects, the two books? Well, okay, so, in math you have, it's called the tzirim, the axis, right? The x-axis, and you have the y-axis and the z. We're only looking at the x-axis at the moment. All right, so one book is from 0 to 5, and the second one is from 5 to 10 on the axis. How do you differentiate between them? Well, every event in science and physics in the universe could be defined or described according to its position on the X, Y, Z, and T axis, right? Length, height, width, and time. So how do you differentiate between two objects, two things in the same plane of existence? They either occupy different space, or they could even occupy the same space, but at a different time. But you're always going to describe them or define them. Define them also by setting them limits based on those characteristics. And that's called an event. All right, so if there were multiple things on one plane of existence, they would have to be defined in physical terms, which would make them physical beings. ואילו היה היוצר גוף וגבייה, and if the creator was in a physical form, היה לו כס ותכלית, then he would have to have some sort of beginning and some sort of end, right? There's limitations to his form. There's where he ends and the next one begins. שאי אפשר להיות גוף שאין לו כס. Because you can't be any physical form that goes on, that's spread out for eternity. וכל שיש לו כס ותכלית, יש לכוחו קץ בסוף. And anything that has a beginning and an end, anything that has a limit to it, also has limited force. Right? Everything, all matter has force. You take the table, right? It could be hard, it could be made of wood, it could be made of plastic, it could be made of stone, whatever it is, if you push down on the table, then you can feel whatever force you're pushing down on the table, it's pushing back up. It's called resistance, right? Second law of Newton. Second law of Newton. If I'm not mistaken. And how do you calculate that force? Well, it has to do with mass. Its mass multiplied by its area, multiplied by the density of the mass is made up of the density and whatever the material is. Okay, so you can feel the force that the table has. If you put too much pressure on the table, you'll exceed its limits and it'll break. So all physical matter has energy and force stored in it, but it also has a limit. And so if God was contained within any physical form, then his force would also be limited. Ve'elohenu baruch shemo, and God blessed be he, הואיל וכוחו אינו כס ואינו פוסק, שהרי הגלגל סובב תמיד, אין כוחו כוח גוף. And the Almighty God, we can observe that his force is infinite. And if his force is infinite, soon we'll see how, right? Then it's not limited. And if it's not limited, the source of that force isn't physical. And if the source of that force isn't physical, then he has no physical dimensions and body. And if he has no physical dimensions and body, then you can't describe him in physical terms, such as up, down, left, right, X, Y, Z, T. And therefore, he can't be anything other than one. There's no differentiation on his plane of existence between him and anything else, because then he'd be limited, then his force would be limited, and we can observe that his force is infinite. And that's why we call him one. It's really, he's one for lack of a better word. It means he's not multiple, there's no multiplicity in him, and there is no division in him. So how do we know that this force is infinite? So Shahare HaGalgal Sovev Tamid. Because the entire universe is in infinite motion. It's always moving. And therefore the force is infinite. And therefore the source of that force is non-physical. And if it's non-physical, then it's not divided from anything else. And since he is not a physical form, right? Then nothing that nothing that applies to physical form can be applied to God. That he can be divided from or separated from another being. Therefore, therefore, there can only be a one single God. And knowing this and acknowledging this is a positive mitzvah. As it says, Adonai Elohenu, Adonai Echad. Right? Right? God, our master, our supreme master, right? God is one. He is one. Does it mean one? He is the ultimate one, the ultimate unique, because he can't possibly be anything other than that. Understood? Any questions? This is a very, very difficult section. So don't be ashamed or afraid to ask questions.
You can hear me. Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Challenge this?
Huh?
Anybody want to challenge this this line of logic?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I'm just saying that when we read the Torah, it's always describing him as if he had a body.
Right. We're going to get to that
outstretched
soon.
hand. Huh?
Right. We're going to address that soon.
Okay.
She's saying that,
So
in the Torah, God is described as having a physical form. So how does that fit in with what we're saying now? Although we say that he is one, and if he is one, he cannot have a physical form. I'll just say quickly what says. God speaks to us in the language of man, right? And since man can only perceive and understand things as he is familiar with, which is physical form, so the Torah describes God as having a hand and motion and things like that. However, even that is limited. It'll only describe God with physical characteristics that are perceived by man as some sort of virtue, like speed and strength, right? Never
But
the
what
opposite.
about Moses? What about Moses when he asked God that he wanted to see him, and he said that you can only see my back.
Right. We're going to be studying.
And then it also says
that's here. That's coming up right here.
Moses saw God face to face. He's the only prophet that saw him face to face.
We'll get to that. It's right here. Any questions on what we've said up until now? Okay. It's all understood? And this is the most difficult section of Maimonides.
Wow, I am I am thinking of the passage of Yeshaya,
Yeah,
where he sees the vision of Hashem that is sitting on the throne
right,
in his temple, and all the borders of his mantle are reaching to the end in every sense, in every direction.
right. So that's
So
going back to Juliet's question. That
yeah,
how is it that the Bible and the Torah itself describes God in physical terms? And we'll get to that.
yeah. I would just like to add that this your explanation of Echad, that he is undiscussibly one and nothing other. I now see this passage with this mantle covering until the border everywhere. There is no space left. So for me, it's
Okay, understand. So meaning that's the realm of existence, and he occupies all of it. Meaning there is no room for anything else. Okay. One more thing I wanted to add in here. So the oneness of God, it's not, there is no possibility for any multiplication over there. So it's not like when pagan religions say, yeah, we agree that there's one God. There used to be two, and one killed the other. It says, well, that's that can't be describing an ultimate creator with infinite power. Because there couldn't have ever been anything else on that plane of existence. Only that one ultimate primary being. So even our one, it's not really a one. We say one because that's how we're accustomed to thinking of it. But the word one is a number, and it's mathematical. God's oneness or uniqueness or unity isn't mathematical.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you said that this is one of the most difficult sections of to understand. So what could you give an example of what people have struggled with before? What have you heard people bring up that they struggle with or have questions with regarding this section?
So you're asking me to provide the questions.
Yes. I'm asking you to give me a question.
All right.
It's a meta question.
What we can do is we can break it down. Remember last week we mentioned that there's the 13 fundamental tenets of faith, right?
Yes.
One of them, for instance, is the resurrection of the dead. And we said there's nothing really to understand regarding the resurrection of the dead. Person was alive, he died, they buried him. One day, he'll rise from his grave somehow. All you need to do is acknowledge that. However, this concept of the oneness of God, the unity of God, blanking everything out of your mind and focusing and meditating on this concept of the unity of God, it's not you either acknowledge or you don't. It's something that needs to be meditated upon, pondered, and when you do that, you're fulfilling that mitzvah of Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And this is the Shema, right? Shema Yisrael. That's why we cover our eyes. It's like sitting down in meditation. And it says, prolong the Dalid, right? The halakha says that you should make the Dalid longer, right? Kind of like, Lahavdin, you have the Buddhists sitting down, they go, like that, right? So instead of we do the, right? And the whole time you're thinking of this concept of what it means, what the concept of ihad means regarding God. Because it doesn't mean one pen or one staple or one person. It means infinite power. What does that mean? Basically, it's the invert of this one is infinity. Try to watch a documentary on the concept of infinity on Netflix. I saw one. Nobody knows what they're talking about. And that's basically what they're saying in the documentary, right? Mikao Kaku and all these great scientists, when they're talking about all these, really advanced mathematicians, they're talking about the concept of infinity. They can see sometimes how it behaves in formulas, but nobody really understands what it is. And this is something to study. The best way to study the concept of this one or infinite God is to really study science, study mathematics, evolve your scientific understanding as much as possible. And the more you do that, and the more you meditate on this concept of singles or singular God, the more you are fulfilling this mitzvah, right? Unlike acknowledging that one day the dead will rise from their graves, it's not just acknowledging the oneness of God. For instance, the Christians, they say, yeah, there is one God. But this one God is made up of three different things, right? They say, there's the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. There's three separate entities that make up this one entity, which we call God. Well, how is that different than saying it's a person that has hands and legs and a head? So they agree that there's one God. But it's divisible into different sections, maybe different responsibilities. God of the sea, the God of the desert, the God of whatever. He says, no, he's one because there can't possibly be any division within him. By the way, there are some Kabbalist sects that they turn this pasuk, Shema Yisrael Hashem Eloheinu Hashem Echad, into a trinity, into a complete pagan trinity. They say Hashem Eloheinu, right? Hashem Eloheinu Hashem Echad. They say, Trinity from the Torah. The Shema itself speaks of it. That's complete avodah zarah.
I agree.
Just need to focus.
With the little knowledge I
meditate.
have, I agree.
Sorry?
With the little knowledge I have, I agree.
Right, well, that's what you start with a little, and eventually you get more and more. And to sit and meditate about this concept, that is one of the biggest mitzvot of the Torah. And this is something that the Torah, many of the mitzvot come to direct you in this direction, right? To this concept, and to educate you to this concept of a one singular God. What is singularity? Right? So you can go deeper. You can acknowledge that there's one God, that there aren't, competing gods. That's one level. Okay, another level, but then still be somewhat mathematical. in your mind. Because this God, maybe, you know, it's divided into 3 different sections. It says, no, but when you understand it further, you realize there is no possibility of division within God. It's some, you see in science and physics, singularity and the infinity, you know, they meet. They're almost interchangeable. What does it mean to think about infinite power of God, the infinite God? Basically, what it means is that it's not part of our physical reality. Anything we perceive in our reality, God is transcendent to it.
So, Sami, if I understand it well, after listening to you a few times, from my perspective, I see it as it's only him. There's nothing past him.
Right? You
It's
see?
him and him only. Nothing in this universe past him. It's him and him only. That's what I perceive.
Right.
Is
From a
that
certain
true?
perspective, yeah. There
Okay.
is nothing, like we said, he is the ultimate reality. Meaning he is like the only reality.
Yes, yes. That's what I
The only
perceive.
actual reality. And that's why he is one. But then he created a reality. So where is this reality he created? There's a concept by the Kabbalists called Tzimtzum. God minimized himself, so to speak. And we'll see more about this concept in the next chapter. It's a very interesting concept because if God if God takes up all the space, so to speak, because there's nothing else, then how is there room for us? So the Kabbalists say, well, he kind of like minimized. They kind of resemble it to like dimming his light a bit to make room for us within himself. We'll see later on how sort of that works. Any more questions?
I have one.
Yes.
There are different types of mitzvah, like it can be categorized into positive and negative, or some mitzvah like 10 commandments. Like there is mitzvah seems like there, or I'm keeping the mitzvah by being in a state. So if knowing that God is one is a mitzvah, it's like once I understood, is it a mitzvah which cannot be undone? Is it like I'm doing the mitzvah constantly as long as I really understand it?
Right. So what's unique about this specific mitzvah, it's not just a mitzvah that you either do or you don't. It's a mitzvah that has many levels to it itself. The deeper your understanding of the oneness of God, the unity of God, the closer you are to God. So it's not you either keep the mitzvah or you don't. It's how powerfully, we'll put it that way, are you keeping this mitzvah?
I see.
And
So
it all has to do with contemplating about this concept.
I see.
For
So is
instance,
it also
there's we have a general rule about mitzvot. It says mitzvot enan tzerichot kavana. Right? You don't need any intention when doing a mitzvah for you to fulfill a mitzvah. All right? You did something good for your parents, right? Then you did the mitzvah of kibul horin, whether you intended to or not. Right? Even, how do you call it? The Chachamim talk about, you know, in shahitat, to slaughter an animal. You take a knife and you throw it randomly, and it slaughters an animal. You fulfilled the mitzvah. You can eat the animal afterwards, if it, you know, if it did it properly. You have no need for any intention in the mitzvah, except for 2 mitzvot that require your intention, and that is the Shema, reciting the Shema, if you don't focus on the Shema, the words of the Shema, and focus on the meaning of the word Ehad, and you just say the phrase or the verse, you didn't complete the mitzvah. And tefillah in a way is a mitzvah about meditating to God. These two mitzvot require intention, a specific intention to fulfill the mitzvah. Because these mitzvot themselves are pure intention. It's focusing your mind on God. They're very little mental mitzvot. But this is the most important one of them.
So can it be said that by reciting Shema, I'm strengthening mitzvah? Or like how does it like?
So when you recite the Shema, you're doing the mitzvah. So basically we have a mitzvah to recite the Shema every day, right? We have a mitzvah to contemplate on this concept of the unity of God every single day. You could just sit down and recite the Shema and just say, oh yeah, God is one. What does it mean? He takes up the entire world. There are no other gods. He is, if you already go to He is, the ultimate reality and fulfills the entire universe, and there's nothing else in the universe beyond Him, that's already going another step further into understanding the mitzvah. And if you meditate about this concept of unity and singularity and infinity, right, and the deeper you can go into it, then the more you are fulfilling this mitzvah.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the word for those mitzvahs which we are doing? What was it, like honoring parents? What did you say?
The mitzvot that require intention was mostly Shema, the Tefillah, and things that have to do with the Mikdash itself, the worship in the Mikdash. Besides that, there aren't really. Most mitzvot that we do don't require any intention. Right? You go to sleep on Shabbat, you don't have to have any special intention for that. You just do it. You do Sefirat HaOmer, right? You do Sefirat HaOmer, you count the Omer, 50 days after Pesach, right? Someone asks you how many days, and you say it's 32 days. You completed the mitzvah. You had no intention to. Anything else?
Yeah, if I can ask also, Hashem Echad, Aleph is one, the letter Aleph. And when you see the letter, it is actually composed of 3 lines.
Right.
It's not Echad. I would expect more Yud or Vav. Already okay, it's already
well, to be fair, these aren't actually Hebrew letters. These are Assyrian letters.
oh yes, I remember now. Yeah, the Aleph is actually the head of the cow or something.
Let's see, I'm gonna do a search of the ancient Aleph. Let's see. Maybe it is one line. No, that looks like a K. No, it's also not.
Yeah, it is the cow's head with 2 horns. So
Yeah, that could.
okay,
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. It's the ancient Aleph. Also 3 lines. Okay, anything else? Okay, so we'll stop here for today. If you have any questions, you're welcome to save them up for next time or reach out to me by email or WhatsApp. And review the class, review it, contemplate about what the meaning of had is. And the more you learn, and the more you contemplate, and the more you understand, right, the closer you're getting to God Himself. And that really is what God wants from us.